Hey everyone, I am responding to discussion board 6 about self-disclosure in the counseling setting. Um, Personally, I think self-disclosure can be good but also bad. I'm kind of stuck in the middle. I think it totally depends on the client, where they are in the counseling process. It for me, it's more about the client. It's not about how I feel. It's if self-disclosure is going to benefit the client, then I think that maybe you could put in little bits and pieces of your own life so that it could help, normalize them and normalize their situations and also make you seem like an actual person. Because I know it's probably really intimidating just, sitting down face to face with a counselor and talking about everything in your life. So I think self-disclosure can really help because it makes you seem like a real person. It makes you normal, and it kind of will help alleviate a little bit of the stress that comes with counseling. I When I was reading the book, it listed some of the things that you should keep in mind when it comes to self-disclosure, and one was that it shouldn't be done on a regular basis, and I think that's really important because if you're starting to self-disclose, in every session, then it'll start to seem like you're building more of a friendship instead of a counselor-client professional relationship, which in the end, the client is going to counseling to help themselves, not to help you with your own problems. So I think it's important to remember that and to keep that in the back of your head when you are deciding to self-disclose or not. I do think that self-disclosing needs to be very focused on the client and not yourself. It cannot have any, you can't have any personal reasons as to why you're self-disclosing. I think if you do self-disclose or you choose to do that, I think you have to put a lot of thought into it. You can't just do it on a whim. And, I'm sure that it does happen. Someone could say, hey, I've been to this restaurant, you'll say, oh yeah, I really liked it, something like small like that. But if you're just self-disclosing about your own problems and your own personal issues, I think that, you need to make sure that it's actually for the client and not for your own personal vendetta. So I found an article on Counseling Today, and just 2 examples from the article about when clients self-disclose, which reading through them I thought was pretty interesting because these two, one of them is a pretty heavy topic. So a client had a near-death experience where he felt like he was totally alone and he was the only person that has gone through an experience like that. And it says that the counselor, she's like, no, I've actually been through a near-death experience, but she didn't want to self-disclose right away. And just to make him feel normal, she put in thought. She went several days thinking about, is this beneficial? Is this something that I should do? So she did self-disclose it, and it kind of helped helped the client feel more at ease, and he realized, maybe it is more of a normal experience that he's going through, his feelings and thoughts towards the experience that he had, and that he's not alone. The counselor really put into thought, and it kind of helped him to understand, and reflect on his own thoughts and feelings and be like, oh, well, I'm not the only person who's gone through this. And then another example was when a counselor was contemplating disclosing that to a client that he was a gay male. The client had come out as gay recently and felt that he explained that he didn't know any other gay men in his life. And so the counselor, put into thought, he's like, well, for me, it's like you gotta pros and cons. Will it benefit the client or will it just benefit you? But the counselor said it in a very nonchalant kind of way, and which surprised the counselor said it in a nonchalant way, so the client was kind of shocked, and he's like, oh, you said that totally normal, and so that kind of helped the client to understand this is a normal experience, and it helped him to differentiate between the stereotypes that he had been previously associating with gay people and gay men. And it also allowed him to explore his own anxieties about his self-identity and how he discloses himself to others. So I think, those are two really good examples of being able to self-disclose and help to normalize client situations that benefit them. But on the flip side, I think it totally depends on the client. If a client is talking about a near-death experience and could not handle, hearing about another person going through a near-death experience, I think you need to evaluate that, and it's something that you should not do. You should not self-disclose that you've also been through a near-death experience. But I do think it totally depends on the client, what they're going through, where they are in the counseling process, if that's something that they can also handle. And you also need to make sure you're not doing it for your own personal sake. Like, you have to really keep reminding yourself that this is not about you, it's about the client. I do think self-disclosing can be difficult. You don't want to share too much information because, like I said, it is about the client, but also you don't want it to be a friendship, which I said earlier. They're not here to make friends. It's kind of something that they need to go somewhere where they can talk to a professional about and get help, which is why they're there. So I do think self-disclosure is good, but I also think it's bad, and I don't really have a right or wrong answer. But researching it, I do think it will benefit some people, but it totally depends on the person, where they are, and how comfortable you are with disclosing things to the client, and also just evaluating if it's for personal reasons or if it's for the client. So thank you guys for listening. I know I kind of rambled a little bit, but I'm excited to hear what you guys also have to say.